Spiderhead is a state-of-the-art penitentiary experimenting with the effects of research chemicals. The test subjects, technically prisoners of the state, are volunteers for the project aiming to reduce their sentence time. The program is overseen by the sympathetic and hospitable Steve Amnesty and his assistant Verlaine. The prisoners have their rooms, do chores, and are free to roam without guard supervision. The subjects undergo daily test runs of various drugs, all of which alter their emotions and perceptions of their surroundings. Inmate Jeff, still reeling from having killed his friend while drunk driving, is given N40, a love drug which distorts his senses and drives him to have sex with two of his fellow inmates, first with Heather and the next day with Sarah. Steve asks him to choose which one to give Darken Phlox, a drug that induces intense fear and psychological pain. He declines to choose, claiming he feels nothing in particular for either one after the effects of the love drug have worn off. The next day, Steve brings Jeff and Rogan, a scary inmate, inside the room. Jeff is suspicious that one of them is going to get the Darken Phlox. He runs out straight to the observation room. He sees Heather there, and he confronts Steve, accusing him of letting Heather choose who's going to get the Darken Phlox. Steve explained that he couldn't do it again because he is still an inmate and had been signed to participate in any of those experiments. Warn him that next time he will send him back to prison. Mark helps Steve administer some N40 to himself. The next day, Steve brings Jeff into the observation room. He tells him that the higher-ups have decided that the younger of the two women, Heather, must be injected with a dose, though it will only last 5 minutes. Jeff reluctantly agrees, and to his horror, Heather commits suicide while on the Darken Phlox after she damages her Moby Pack, the device that administers the drugs. As Steve rushes out of the projection room, he drops his keys. Jeff unlocks Steve's desk compartment, discovering that there are no higher-ups. The prison is run by Amnesty Pharmaceuticals, Steve's company. The drugs were named from a bingo card. Mark becomes doubtful about their work in the facility, which causes him to confront Steve. Steve and Jeff get high together on a laughing drug, as Steve also has a Moby Pack installed. He tells Jeff that his father abandoned him as a child. Later, Jeff confesses to Lizzie, an inmate he is close with, that he killed his friend in the car accident. He also killed his girlfriend. Lizzie hugs him, and they kiss. Steve notices Jeff's feelings for Lizzie. Mark becomes doubtful of Steve's motives and breaks down when Jeff confronts him. When Steve asks Jeff to administer Darken Phlox to Lizzie, Jeff takes control of Steve's Moby Pack, reveals that Mark has spiked his Moby Pack with Darken Phlox, and forces him to admit the true goal of the program, testing a compliance drug B6. The other drugs are merely side projects used to put B6 to the ultimate test, whether or not they would harm their love when commanded. The entire time inmates had been consenting to the various tests, they had been under the influence of the obedience drug. In addition, Steve informs Jeff that he had finished his sentence 7 months previously, while Lizzie's appeal for release had passed the previous week. Jeff forces Steve to open the main entrance door to free Lizzie and then tries to order him to hand over the pocket knife. Steve resists the order, as complying would be killing the project, the only thing he has ever loved, and instead takes his phone and enables all 4 vials of Darken Phlox in Lizzie's Moby Pack, causing her to behave hysterically and attempt suicide. The two fight for control, and Jeff can disarm Steve, damaging his Moby Pack. Jeff rushes to save Lizzie, successfully removes the vials of Darken Phlox, and tells her he loves her. Still, Steve gets up and orders the other inmates to apprehend Jeff and Lizzie. They are able to escape from Spiderhead after overpowering some of the other inmates and locking the main door behind them. Mark and the police are now approaching the island as Steve escapes on his float plane, but he joyously crashes into a mountain as he is now high off of his damaged Moby Pack. Meanwhile, Jeff and Lizzie take the remaining motorboat and escape. In a voiceover, Jeff comments that no drug can bestow self-forgiveness, instead it must be worked on and chosen.